Hello, hello, hello. I don't see any screen here. Preview screen. Maybe that's normal. I don't know. Let me see. I want to go live. Um, go live. Yeah, I'm live streaming right now. Okay, good. Can I be able to see my typing? Apparently, it's not showing up in. Apparently, it's not showing up. I can see myself. I can see that I'm streaming, but I can't see in the OBS. Okay. I'm going to see if I can do the chat. See if I can look at the chat. Customer Brower. Okay. Apply. Nothing seems to be happening. Add docs by giving them a name and URL, then click apply. I'm clicking apply. Nothing's happening. YouTube chat. Nothing is happening. Just okay. All right. I'm going to go to content. I'm going to go to live. Something is happening. I remember the three dots, but I remember that that's not where I go. I guess I would go here. How do I see the chat? If anybody's doing a chat. Darn. Okay. Settings. I remember working on this yesterday. I really do want to chat. Stream. All that is set up already. All right. I'm going to go ask Google Gemini. And of course, Google Gemini is verbose when it comes to its introduction. It can be frustrating when everything seems ready to go, but the most blah, 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 blah. Check the YouTube's allow chat setting. Aha, go to your YouTube live control room on your computer browser. Okay. Computer browser, it's vague. Okay, YouTube control room. Click edit, top right, go to customization. I guess that means in details. All right. YouTube live control room. I remember this before. How do I get to the YouTube live control room? content. Is this the control room? View in live control room. Okay. All right. And it has the monkey. That's the problem. It shows the monkey. Darn it. Okay, what does it say? Click edit, top right. Where's... Okay, I'm going to do a screenshot because that's the quickest way of communicating with Google Gemini. Okay. Okay, I shared the screenshot. So it says here. Don't refresh the page. Hold hold shift and click the refresh button in your browser. Okay. Where's the refresh button? Okay. Okay. So I guess that means in the menu at the top, hold down shift and press refresh. I hope this is giving me accurate information. This is annoying. Reload this page. Okay, I'm going to say I'm using Chrome. Okay. Oh, it says reload this page is exactly what you're looking for. Okay. So I go back to this, hold down the shift key, click the reload icon. The curly arrow next to the address bar. Okay, I'll do that. Okay. Whoop, no, I'm doing this. Okay. Okay, so I did that. Aha, the monkey still remains. Okay. Closed. It says I'm live, but it still has this monkey. Okay. All right. Here's what it says. Why the chat is missing. If the reload doesn't work, the something went wrong message usually happens for one of these two reasons. The window is too narrow. Sometimes the YouTube Studio layout hides the chat if the window isn't wide enough. Try making your Chrome window full screen. Ad blockers. If you have an extension like AdBlock or uBlock Origin, it might be blocking the chat script. Try clicking the three dots in the top right of Chrome, new incognito window. They make these things so complicated. Oh, I see new incognito window. Okay. What did this say again? Ad blockers. Try clicking the then log back into your YouTube studio there. Okay. It says I've gone incognito. Okay. Something tells me this is the wrong way of doing it. How else do I do this? This is so stupid. All right, what did it say again? The OBS preview in your screenshot, the OBS preview is black. Even if we get the chat back, your viewers might only see a black screen. In OBS, look at your sources box, which is this. All right. Open properties, none. Why didn't it say? I was wondering about that. This is so stupid. Why can't it just... All right. Double click the camera, which probably gives properties of the camera, but anyway. All right. Discard. All right. Just double click the camera. That get the same thing. Okay. Reconnect to device. Does that do anything? No. Make sure I don't have anything. In OBS, look at your sources box. Yes. Double click, which I did. Make sure your iPhone 8 is selected in the device drop-down menu. I can't see any way of adding it to the drop-down menu. It just says none here. All right, let me type that in. I'm going to unplug the phone from the computer and do it again. Or maybe, oh, that's why, because it's not, okay, it's not plugged in. Okay. Aha. Now I can see something. Okay. All right. Oh, for Pete's sake. All right. Good. Okay. We have something. We have video anyway. An audio. Okay. Okay, now I see it. Wasn't plugged in. Okay. Um are you able to see the chat window now? All right. The chat window. View scene list mode. Dock toolbars. No, profile. All right. Apply. I just keep clicking apply, nothing happens. All right, close. Darn. I'm gonna go in and see if the chat is there now. Okay. This all right. I'm gonna click shift and refresh. Darn, the stupid monkey is still there. Okay. And it's playing. Yeah, there's a few seconds of delay. All right. How do I get this monkey off my back, my screen? All right. At this point, I might as well do full screen. There. Okay. Okay. This. Okay. All right. Press Command Shift N to open a new incognito window. Shift Command N. Okay. Go to YouTube Studio or studioyoutube.com. Okay. I don't want to have to sign in again. Darn it. Can I clear my Chrome cache cookies? Um, clear. I guess delete browsing data. Would that be it? I guess do what clear browsing. Okay. Okay. Worked yesterday. Today. Okay. I feel like I want to talk to somebody to help clear this mess up, but nobody's around. So thankfully, Google is here. Google Gemini is here. It's about the only thing I have. Delete data. All right. Okay, I deleted that. Now maybe I can refresh this. It says request access to streaming. Once requested, it may take up to 24 hours to get access to live stream. Phone verification? What the heck? Next. Oh, come on. I don't want all this. I just want pop-up dashboard. This is so stupid. Not connected. I think I'm just going to take a live screenshot and send it to Gemini. Okay. This is after. Click that white request button. All right. This. Okay. Apparently, I can see a red square with a white dot, so that indicates I'm still going live. I'm still live. Um, this is annoying. All right. Go to your YouTube channel and click your live video, the one your audience sees. Here, right inside. Okay. Okay. Here. There's my live video. Okay. Chat should appear on the right side. I think this is a matter of Gemini recognizing where I am. Oh my gosh, it's a miracle. Wow. Oh, wow, wow, wow. Okay. Okay. At this point, I don't care if anybody's watching right now. I was able to get it secured. Let me go to Gemini and say it now works. It now works. I can see the chat. Good. Okay. Good. Okay, I'm going to keep that open, but right now, okay. I'm apparently the OBS preview, or the preview on my main screen is delayed, so I'm just going to go through this and look at my iPhone, because that's distracting. Or maybe it's not distracting if it doesn't look like I'm in sync with what I'm seeing myself. But so I have several playlists, and I haven't added content to the playlist other than a placeholder. But I wondered if any of you had stories you'd want to tell, stories you're interested in. How many of you were interested in the paranormal? How many of you are interested in 80s nostalgia, filmmaking? I'd even add in female impersonation, or even the Bible. I know this is little bitty steps. Sorry for if you've been waiting patiently. Nobody's watching. I can tell nobody's watching, but I'll just talk anyway. That means no pressure, right? How did I get into the paranormal? Well, no, let's see. Let's talk about 80s nostalgia and 80s action figures. I want to start up a YouTube playlist called 80s Toy Aisle. And see, I have, maybe you can come up with ideas for other franchises. I wanted to create like 10 episodes in the 80s Toy Aisle playlist, like per season, like streaming videos do. And so at the top of the list, I made a list of 10. And the top of the list, I put Transformers, because primarily I'm a Transformers guy. G.I. Joe, Mask, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, even though they were at the cartoon was at the tail end of the series, at the tail end of the decade. But actually, the comic book was out in 1984. A lot of good things came out in 1984, particularly movies. I remember off a little. Well, I'll get into that a little bit later. But Transformers, GI Joe, Mask, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Centurions, Sectors, those insect toys, Visionaries, which I thought was a great idea. And sorry, I found out that only yesterday that this camera for OBS Studios will appear because I'm not using the pro version, the premium version. There's always a catch. Masters of the Universe. I bet a lot of you are interested in the new Masters of the Universe movie, the live action movie. I've seen the Canon Films Masters of the Universe movie. I want to talk about that in a little bit, but I've got 2 other slots, and I don't know what to cover in those 2 other slots for episodes. What really demands an episode to be made? I went to the The Toys That Made Us, which is a streaming series on Netflix. I wish they had more episodes, really, and that's something like what I want to create with this. They have Legos, they have wrestling figures, but I couldn't really think of something high enough that would warrant taking up those 2 slots. And I'm thinking, and Micronauts, of course, would, I guess, factor. Micronauts might be something. I know it eventually went into Transformers. Sorry, I had peanut butter and I don't have much food, so I'm kind of surviving on Gatorade and peanut butter somebody donated, and I ate the last banana I have, but I'm gonna have to make do until payment. Right now I'm between paychecks, sort of unemployment, I guess, checks right now. Anyway, back to this. Maybe I can just go through and mention some tidbits going through the list. Transformers. Well, you probably know that Transformers came from Voltron. Oh, I bet Voltron could fill the 9th place. All right, that's 9. Transformers was in that milieu of imported Japanese toy lines, and you probably know that Micronauts had a subset called Microchange, and that it was Diaclone and Microchange, both produced by Takara, that were imported into the United States as Transformers. And you probably know about the rebranding by Marvel and Hasbro to become Transformers. G.I. Joe, I wasn't really a G.I. Joe fan. I liked the figures, the small figures, for their artistry and the fact that they too, being produced by Hasbro and Marvel, partly branded by Marvel, they had those file cards, and I really liked that idea. Mask, 80s toys had really dynamic concepts and character creation, so forth. Mask. I have the whole DVD set, and I don't think the DVD set comes with or includes the 2nd season. It's amazing. It seems to have run longer than 2 seasons, but I guess Mask only ran for 2 seasons. That was one of the first shows that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed when I got cable for the first time. I remember my mom, I came home from school, and I don't remember what was on. It may have been Mask. I don't remember what was on, but I before I got it, I remember the kids talking about Danger Mouse and Mask, and you can't do that on television. And then it was so new. We did not have color TV sets. We had black and white, and I had a black and white TV in my own room. And I didn't have a private phone, but I had a private black and white TV right at the foot of my bed, and I loved it. Those are magical times. Um, and I could see for the first time, it felt like I had finally had access to these shows that everybody else, I was like in the know now. And then later, relatively soon, I got color. My mom and I went to Seneca Mall, and I got a color TV set, and we lugged it home on the bus, the city bus, and I remember that. But going back to this mask, what was your favorite mask toy? I really liked Rhino. I remember my best friend Peter. One of my best friends, Peter, I should say, had these amazing toys. I remember he had Rhino. He may have had, was it Thunder? I want to say Thunderbird, Matt Tracker, and Thunderhawk. Maybe was it Thunderhawk? I always liked Rhino because, of course, it was large and had so many features in it. What toys did I have? What mask toys did I have? I didn't have that many. It seemed that Peter got so many toys. I envied him, really. Um, I'm pretty sure he had Rhino. With the little car that comes out, and there were two figures. There was Sato. It was really racking my brain. Bruce Sato, and Matt Tracker. And I like the idea of the helmets having special powers. I could never really understand what Spectrum's power was, because the Spectrum mask's power was, because it seemed to do everything. It's just Spectrum literally means, from here to there. Unless it means some electromagnetic spectrum or something. But I guess they kept that vague. I don't know why. Because it's like with Superman. If you give Superman all these powers, and I know it wasn't planned out that way, but if Superman can run super fast, literally, and has incredible strength, then what about Flash and Hawkman and these other ones? Like, what would they be doing? Like Superman. I guess Superman can only help one person at a time, so I guess Flash could do something else, but help in some other way. But I was gonna say something escaped my mind. I'll get better at this. So I would write stories, like Transformer stories, in my spare time, and I wrote a novella for my best friend Peter for his birthday, and it was 61 pages. It was typed, but it had to do with a disease that was something like cosmic rust. I really liked that episode, Cosmic Rust, and I don't remember the details. Fortunately, I still have it. It's in the other room. It wasn't included in my book that's available on Amazon of my creative stuff, because it has IP, intellectual property, attached to it. So I didn't want to run the risk of like selling a book on Amazon using Transformers characters. But I think it's pretty well done and pretty adult. I was aiming for something like a novel, because I would read Star Trek novels when I was a kid, at elementary school and middle school and onward. I had so many of them, but I had to leave them behind in a move recently, just after my mom died. But I did buy CD-ROM of presumably all the different novels up to a certain point, obviously. But I hope that can be played, because there's something special about being able to just take a book, and a physical book, and flip through the pages. I need to get this setup working better. I talked a little bit about, in terms of filmmaking, I talked a little bit in my previous live about the TV shows I have in mind. I don't know what I'd want to reveal. So I'll keep that quiet for now. Let's go back to 80s toys. What were your 80s toy, your favorite 80s toy franchises? I came up with a few topics, and I added some topics. There were some toys that we almost got, I don't know why they gave us the Love Boat. I mean, in some quirky way, it's just for the novelty of it. It's interesting they gave us action figures of Love Boat, but including a little bit of the. You got to have the boat in some sense, I guess. The little boat itself, I think it was like a cabin or something, but that would be neat. I never thought of that before. Remember the USS Flag? And I know many people have said that, characterized it as a waste of money or a huge, expensive footstool or something. I would love to have had the USS Flag. I'm amazed that they mass produced it, something that big. I don't know how long it is, but it is or was. I guess they're still around, so I guess I can say is. But wow, would that be my ultimate play set? What do you think about the Death Star? Play sets on the Death Star. Now I know that they have a couple of different play sets. They put out a couple of different play sets. I think one was in the Britain, the UK, and one was in the United States. I think, was it Palitoy? Let me tell you a story. Speaking of that, I got some Star Wars figures and play sets from garage sales, and I got Luke's land speeder. Was it the land speeder? Speeder bike or something? I get confused sometimes between the land speeder and the speeder bike, but the speeder bike is in Return of the Jedi. Okay, the land speeder. You know that hood in the front that you lift open? You can put stuff in there. I think you could put stuff in there, but mine wouldn't open. The one that I got in a garage sale wouldn't open. It was just simply a crease of a hood, and I couldn't understand that. I remember when I was with Peter, I was over at his house. We were in his bedroom, and we were looking at this catalog. And it may have been one of the first times I had, early on when I just met Peter, and we were going through the catalog, and I remember headphones. I remember very little that was in the catalog. Something to do with games, video games, or something, and the fact that the land speeder had this hood that you can, with the door, the hood can flip up, and mine didn't have it. I sort of remember that. I found out later that it wasn't a later version of the land speeder. It was that Palitoy didn't want to include it for some bizarre reason. I don't know why. Maybe it was an extra part that they felt they didn't need to mold separately. It was stupid. Why do they have these variants? I mean, sometimes variants are cool, but if you want, either this one or that one, like with faces, I like that now where you, the more modern stuff, you can swap out one face for another one. I love the Masterpiece Transformers. Those are the Transformers that we imagined as kids. When we were playing with the original G1 Transformers, we imagined that Starscream could move around and so forth, just like in the cartoon. And now with Masterpiece Transformers, and then later on they've had better mobility. They have the ability to just have more parts in there. You got to remember, the Transformers, effectively, the designs were, and the molds were in 1982. So even though Transformers itself came out in 1984, 82 and 83 from Japan. And so you have to realize that. But Masterpiece was the first line that started really looking great, like really looking like both a jet fighter or whatever, and the cartoon version of what we saw of the character. There's some interesting things that were in the tech specs for Transformers that never made it into the cartoon. And the same thing with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. The toy line itself was Masters of the Universe, and as much as I would enjoy live action Masters, I almost said Transformers. I'd like a live action Transformers done well, but a live action Masters of the Universe movie, obviously they're going to go into the Filmation version, just like they did with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. However, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had aspects of both the origins, the comic book origin version, and elements of the cartoon. And at that point, when I saw the TMNT movie, I wasn't familiar with the original comic books, so I was going in thinking about, as many kids were probably going in thinking about the cartoon. And when they mentioned this alternate storyline, this other version of the origin story, it seemed, like, did they make this up and so forth? So I remember I told a kid in comic, just after watching it, we were in the mall. I was sitting with some kid I didn't know. I just happened to be sitting with him, and he had just bought one of the toys, and I said that, and on the back it had a description of the character and the origin story of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and so forth. And I said that's the actual origin, or that's closer to the origin, or whatever, because I had only been familiar with the cartoon. So sorry, whoever you are out there. Sorry, no. What they had in the live action movie, the 1990 live action movie, is closer to the original comic book. I think that what I consider true, or the original intent, goes with the original author wherever it originally aired, whatever venue it originally came out in. Like, going back to Masters of the Universe, you probably know that the characters, the figures in, I'll just say Motu because I'm tired of saying Masters of the Universe. The original Motu figures came with mini comic books, and I read those. Those are very different, especially the early ones were very different from the Filmation cartoon series. It was a little bit darker, somewhat darker, depending on what you call darker. I'd love to see a movie on that. I see something, if I were to write a movie based on Motu, I know I would get backlash from so many Filmation fans, but I want to do something like Conan. I would base He-Man, I would characterize He-Man like Conan, and I'd have a goddess with the snake armor, the snake thing around her and so forth. And I'd portray Skeletor coming in from an alternate dimension, and he'd have his demons of odd creatures and so forth. Demons, basically, coming in, and I'd base it around trying to gain access to Grayskull. Of course, you have to have a really thrilling storyline to keep the audience, because it would be in Eternia, right? So what's in Eternia? You have jungle, you have desert, you have a castle. With CGI now, I guess it's you could do more, but you'd still have to have an interesting storyline to keep them motivated. You can't do it, for example, what they had in 1987 live action movie, where they went to Earth and there's a lot of interaction with the public and so forth. So it would all be Motu characters, which would be fun. Then that way you get a lot of Motu characters in there. Orko, would you want Orko in the movie? I mean, I know I would get backlash. I would want to go to the original roots. Just like with Transformers, I wouldn't do it as a live action version of the cartoon series. I would do it as what you saw in Buddy Yansky's original tech specs. And I would want to comment on the nature of war, That's something that I think maybe was it high school, somewhere around high school or college. I was wanting there to be a live action adult series, and that's actually one of the series I started designing. I came up with like 22 different ideas for TV shows. Um, this is about around 2000, so 1999, 2000. I would love to do an adult version of Transformers, and I guess even way back when I wrote that novella for Peter, I was thinking I wrote it as an adult thing. They're dealing with a crisis, just like a thrilling novel. And of course, the Decepticons and the Autobots have to come together and figure this out. Um, so that's it for TMNT. Mask. Let me go back to. Oh. Besides Mask. Oh. I wanted to talk about one line of toys that we almost got. I think there were a couple of lines that we almost got. We almost got um, a toy line of the Dark Crystal movie. I have not seen. I think I saw bits of it, but I tired from seeing it. It didn't get to me. It didn't reach me. But it's interesting. Growing up, I was always curious, but things were different then. The availability of movies wasn't as widespread as it is now. We almost got a Dark Crystal group of action figures. We almost got what was the movie The Last Starfighter. We almost got that, and that seems tailor made for merchandising. It's a good movie, tailor made for merchandising, and here's a unfortunately short-lived TV show that they almost made. I mean, they made one large doll of it, and that's V. How many of you had seen V? There was a remake, or kind of almost rebooted, soft reboot, as they say, soft reboot of V around 2000 something. And I'm talking about the original, I think it was 1983, 1984. They came out with V. See, what happened was that, off my head, I'm blanking on the name of the person who created it, but I think he also adapted the TV series Alien Nation. That is a great TV show from the movie. He created the TV series adaptation of the movie Alien Nation, and I think the TV show is much, much better. Of course, they were able to go in depth in a lot of different areas. It's basically like you have newcomer aliens who had been slaves, and I'll try not to go into spoilers, but okay, so there's a ship that's sighted in the Mojave Desert, and there are overseers who are slave masters, and they're what was the name? I know they called them overseers. The Klizon Sung, and they had 250,000 slaves, and so already you're getting into cultural, real deep social commentary. It's fun. It's where science fiction shines, and it crashes. The ship crashes on Earth, and as it says in the opening theme to the TV series, they've washed ashore on Earth with no way to get back home. 250,000 slaves, and of course the overseers mixed amongst them. So, of course the slaves have this newfound freedom, right? They're able to coexist. It focuses on one family of one former slave family, and there's a father and a mother, and let me see, a young daughter, an older son, and then he's a police partner with his human partner. Let me see, Matthew Sykes, and and it's like it's sort of like the movie In the Heat of the Night. A little bit In the Heat of the Night, and there was a movie where was it somebody on Mars? I don't remember. There was a movie, nuts, not was it not Robinson Crusoe on Mars? It was no it was no. I'm mixing it up. There was a movie where somebody is on an alien planet, and he has to deal with this other humanoid creature, and the two form a friendship, and there are other aspects to it. It's if you blend that with In the Heat of the Night, that's something like Alienation. So they only created one season. That would have been interesting as figures or some kind of, I don't know, how would you merchandise some of these favorite TV shows. Anyway, getting back to V. So Kenneth Johnson, right? Kenneth Johnson, who adapted Alienation to the small screen as a TV series, had this concept about what if Germans from 1930s, I don't know if you can say the N word, Germans from the 1920s or whatever. What happened then in that era were to happen in modern day Earth or modern day America? And there was a book around that time called "It Could Happen Here," or either it couldn't happen here or it could happen here. I think it could happen here. And so he wrote it, and this is in the early 1980s when, of course, science fiction was big. Star Wars and not Indiana, but Star Wars and a lot of knockoffs of Star Wars came out. You had Battlestar Galactica and so forth. So what studio was that? Was it NBC? Something. One of those studios it was pitched to said, well, we're not interested in this. Whether they mentioned it or Kenneth Johnson came up with the idea, I don't know. But he just mixed that concept in with science fiction, and he came up with V, and they bought it. Went huge. It was huge. It was only a 2-night miniseries, and then it was so successful that they created V: The Final Battle, which is another two-part miniseries the following year. However, they didn't have the same. I don't know if Kenneth Johnson was even involved in the second one. They didn't have the people. I don't know. I mean, they had the cast members, I think, but they didn't have a lot of the production people involved in the second one, and the budget was cut and so forth. And then that was still successful, or they decided to do the series anyway. But they made like 13 episodes of a TV series, and I don't know whether it's still available. You can probably find it on Amazon, but I have both V, which is also available in Blu-ray. I have the Blu-ray version too, and V: The Final Battle, and then the TV series. There were also comic books. I have at least one issue. I think I have the first issue. No. Yeah, the first issue, I think, of the comic book. But they could have, it was almost like Star Wars. I mean, as the expression goes, they could have printed their own money. I mean, in fact, in the first one, the first movie or the second movie, somewhere in there, first or second miniseries, I think it was the first miniseries, they have some kid playing with toys, in IRL, within the context of the story. They have him playing with toys based on these real alien visitors who came, and that in itself is interesting commentary on how you could create propaganda, create toys, create merchandise of these invading aliens who want to take over Earth, but do it in a friendly way. You don't just come in with force. See, in the storyline, I don't want to go into that many spoilers, but in the storyline, they come to Earth as peaceful. They say we can cure diseases. We want to make, we come in peace and so forth. Of course, we find out later, blah, 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 blah. But that would be one of the ways. And then they have recruitment posters. They have like a teen group, or as usual with these dictatorships, they have like a teen group that is empowered to spy on their parents and so forth. What an insidious. So they have these insidious things, and one insidious way of doing it is to come up with merchandise that paints the aliens in a friendly light. So so they show this kid playing with the spaceship and the action figures and so forth. And oh my gosh, they could have really. I mean, you have modern character. I mean, you have a common group of characters. You've got the fifth columnist. You've got several characters in the rebellion fifth column. And then you've got several alien characters. Then you've got the spaceship, the shuttlecraft. I don't know what they would do with the mothership. I don't know. You'd have to have some kind of play set or something. But boy, they could have done so much with that. Because like with Star Wars, they had the Kenner Star Wars figures, right? But there was a lot more depth in Star Wars and social commentary than just the action figures. I like when they do that. Even with Star Trek. And that's another one. Star Trek could have made oodles and oodles of money from... Now, of course, in later years, they were with Galoob and... I don't remember what the other toy company was, but they have since made oodles and oodles of Star Trek action figures and characters and so forth, play sets and so forth. But early on, in the beginning decades, like especially the 1970s. Now, don't get me wrong, they did come out with like a play communicator and a phaser, non-working, of course. A tricorder that did a few things, beeps and sounds and so forth. But they look at, and they did, when Star Trek the Motion Picture came out in 1979, they did have some action figures of course, the main cast, and from what I've heard, there was an Enterprise bridge that twisted and mangled if you looked at it funny. And don't let your dog run through. And a few aliens, but that was it. Think of this is after 3 seasons and several comic books and several novels. And think of let me see. Aside from the main crew, you could have had Yeoman Rand. You could have had the Enterprise bridge. You could have had just the corridor. That would have been interesting, just as a play set, the Enterprise corridor, because they use the same set, the hallway set. You just come up with a play set of that hallway and the bridge and the transporter room and so forth, and an alien planet surface. Boy, you could have made a lot of money. Let's talk about, speaking of Kenner, let's talk about the Indiana Jones, the Adventures of Indiana Jones. I remember I think I'd gotten maybe a couple of figures, and then I wanted to get the whole set. All right, so and there were only a few. I don't know how many there were. It'd be interesting, actually. Nobody's, I guess, watching at this point, so I don't know. Maybe one person is watching right now. But for those of you watching later on after the live stream, I'm going to see if I can I'm going to see if I can list all of the different figures they had. Now there was there were further plans to do a Temple of Doom figures series, and they came up with a few figure prototypes, something like that. I don't remember how far that went, but anyway, I got a few figures, 1 or 2 figures, and then I think I probably got Indiana Jones, and maybe one other figure, and then this would have been during the summer. So I raked leaves and bagged them up, and it was like $7 or something. And let me see, $1 a bag maybe. It's little. It seems like chump change now, and I think it probably was a little bit chump change then. But for that money, I was able to buy all the original figures. Now, what did I get? I got Indiana Jones. I got Marion Ravenwood. Too bad. I've heard since then, I mean, more recently, that she was rare. Unfortunately, my action figures didn't survive, especially Marion Ravenwood. She's got thin legs and thin arms, so she kind of melted and something. And I lost her dress long time ago. But anyway, all right. So going back, I got Indiana Jones, I got Marion Ravenwood, I got Sala, I got uh, what's his name? Indiana Jones in German outfit. I got, of course, tote, and with the coat you can detach, and it seems like there were many more figures. Oh, I got Balak. I didn't do the mail away. There was a mail away for a Balak that where he was in his ceremonial robe when he opens up the ark and so forth. I didn't get that. I didn't get the horse that they sold. I didn't get any of the play sets. Now when I think about it, there didn't seem to be that many figures on the market, were there? There was Indiana Jones, the German German outfit. There was also the German Guard, which I also got. There was Marion Ravenwood. There was Sala. There was Tote. That's 6. It kind of fit. Yeah. You know what? I said remember I said $1 a bag and 7 bags and so forth. Figuring something like $1 for each figure, $2 maybe for each figure. That kind of, that fits. That makes some sense. And I may have had a couple of figures already. So I wish they had gone further, but there was another Kenner line that I collected. It was Superpowers, and I didn't get all the figures. By the way, was there any action figure series where there was what they call, I guess, a chase figure, where there's this figure that's rare? I'll skip out of Kenner for the moment. I want to go to Star Trek: The Next Generation. I know was it Galoob Toys? There was one that came out when the first season premiered. There was one toy line that had limited figure assortment, and then this other toy line took over. And I'm pretty sure Galoob was the first one. I got it was a regular 4-pack. It was Picard, Riker, Worf, and Geordi LaForge, and those are the 4. And then I got the Enterprise, the small Enterprise with a detachable saucer, and whether it was the second set of that first line or not, I don't know. But they later came out with Q in courtroom outfit, and anyway, I don't want to bore you, but anyway, they came up with a few more figures, and this is around 87, 88, and nowhere could I see Tasha Yar, nor Data. And those, coincidentally, were the ones with the yellow uniforms, and I couldn't find them. I would have gotten them. So I guess you had 6 figures, really, plus the Enterprise, plus they had a Ferengi, and they had a whip, and a Ferengi whip, and they had Q in courtroom outfit and so forth later on. But Yar and Data, I just could not find. Otherwise, I would have found some way of getting them. So were there any toy lines that you wanted to get, where you wanted to get a certain figure, just couldn't find? So now I'm going back to the Kenner Superpowers figures, and I remember this kid he was like 4 years old and I was 7. So, but in those years, when you're that age, there's a drastic difference between 4 and 7. So, maybe 8, something like that. Anyway, he had Masters of the Universe figures. He had Superpowers figures. So I got Superman. Had to have Superman, and Superman, Batman, Green Lantern. I really liked the design of Green Lantern's costume, and Green Lantern. I know he had the Flash. He had Darkseid. Was it Darkseid? Yeah, Darkseid. I really liked Darkseid's design. And then when I read more about the comic book version, I really liked Darkseid even more. But Wonder Woman Wonder Woman and Robin were two figures I just didn't seem to get. There were more figures I had. All right, so I had Superman, I had Batman, I had Green Lantern, I had Brainiac, I had the Penguin, I had the Joker. So that's also like about the same size number of figures as I had for Adventures of Indiana Jones. I had for Kenner's Superpowers collection. That was 6. And I had Lex Luthor. That makes 7. Then I mailed away, and this is something they should have continued with, but I mailed away and I got a Clark Kent action figure. So technically that would be 8. And I don't think I had anything outside of that. Of course, I'm so glad about this. They expanded in series 3. I think they had like 3 series, but they certainly expanded. And of course, as usual, with a toy line, I remember somebody saying you have basically 3 good years. Or 3 phases of years. You have an entry when it's novel and people just started getting it, and then you have like the mainstream. We're in a high point phase, and then you have a next phase, which is okay. The toy collection is dying down. You can take that to Transformers, right? You had, although Transformers seem to come in guns a-blazing, so to speak. You see that in although Transformers had a second wave of life, really. 1984, you had the initial novelty. You had the classic characters, what they call like the ARC crew, Optimus Prime, Megatron, so forth. And then 85, they really expanded. So you went from how many characters were there in the original, in the 1984 set? And I'm not including I'm not including Reflector and these mail-away things that came later, but they were available in Japan. You had Optimus Prime. You had 11 Freedom Fighter cars, so that's 12, and then 6. So that's about 18 Autobots. And for Megatron, for the Decepticons, you had Megatron, 3 jets. You had Soundwave, which came with Buzzsaw, and then you had 4 cassettes, really. So in 1985, you had a huge explosion of characters. You had the Constructicons, you had Jetfire, and at that point, Hasbro was looking elsewhere beyond just Takara for their figures, and that's where you run into the Jetfire problem, and you had Omega Supreme, and you had one of my interesting hobbies, one of my interesting research projects for a book I'm writing. I guess was finding out where these other characters came from, what other toy lines did they originate from. And you start noticing little answers to the mysteries that you came up with. Like, if I remember correctly, Omega Supreme with that motorized walk and so forth was in the same toy line as what's his name? Skylynx. So that's why the two have that motorized action feature, because they came from the same toy line. If I remember correctly, it was called Toy Box. And I don't know anything more about the company. I don't know. I'm certain that they no longer exist, but the company, that is. But I'd love to track these things down. But anyway, where was I? The 3 phases. So that was their big phase. So they were novel in 84, and they were huge in 85, and then 86. That's where you, as Transformers fans can readily attest, that's where things start dividing. That would be the 3rd phase, where things are starting to go down. However, Hasbro was clever. They had the movie coming out in 86, so that boosted things a bit, and they were advertising, of course, the new toy. So in some sense, the movie served as a pivot. We know the sales are going down, or we want to shift in a different. I don't want to necessarily say that they knew that the sales were going down, but they they wanted to introduce two new toys. And by the way, the plans for the movie and the scripting for the movie came out during season 1. I think season 1. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, season 1, maybe 2, probably season 1 of the original cartoon. So they were already coming up with the movie at that point. You have to draw all that animation in 1980s technology, with 1980s technology. So you have some figures that resemble our modern, that resemble the 84 and 85 toy lines. And then they're shifting towards futuristic designs. And, of course, there are reasons for that. You wouldn't have to pay royalties to the car companies for taking their car designs. You wouldn't have to worry about this. Megatron, they certainly worried. I know there would have been concern about him being a gun. So they had to make him into Galvatron, which would be less recognizable as a gun. And they were clearly shifting things. So that's what I mean by a new phase of life. So as the toy line was going down, and people have talked about growing older, right? If you were, say, 7 years old, which I was I was actually 9 when the original series came out. In 1984 when the original toy line came out. You would have been like entering middle school. Was that 1986? 86. I was still in elementary school. I was in the latter end of middle school. So 87 especially, I would have been in 5th grade. And elementary school would have ended, for me anyway, with 6th grade in 87, 88 season, so TV season. So anyway, the kids are getting older, so you have to pivot and rejuvenize the toy line. So they went with Headmasters and Target Masters first, and then the following year they went with Power Masters, and then they went into not Battle Beasts. The Battle Beasts were part of it, but in the United States anyway, they decided to make it its own separate toy line, perhaps wisely. But in Japan, it was part of the Transformers. And you can tell, even, the idea of the symbol, whether it's water or earth or fire, whatever element, it resembles that rub symbol that they had, that the Transformers had. But they had to pivot, and they were successful. They were certainly successful. I mean, they ended, I think their final year, at least in the U.S., was like 1990, and that was that silverish catalog. Silver, the catalog was silver, and then they had windows of the particular sub-characters or subgroups. And then, whereas in Japan, it continued on. And then in the United States, I think it was 92, I think, they had Generation 2, where they basically reintroduced molds from the original line. I feel a sneeze coming on. Hopefully it won't explode on me. And then they had Beast Wars, so they were really rejuvenating themselves with each new creation. So it wasn't just a toy line, and then they pivot to another toy line that lasts a few years. They had Generation 2, which was like a regurgitation of Generation 1. Then Beast Wars was very different take. So there you had creatures, living creatures, robots resembling human creatures, and then or biological creatures. And then I guess you could say it was a variation on that same thing. They had Beast Wars, and then I want to say Transceivers. What was the Transstators? There was like a more of a hybrid between the mechanization and the human, or the animal, and the beast. And I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was like essentially a second wave of Beast Wars. And then they continued it on. So Hasbro has been really successful. They know when to pivot. They know when to take a break for a bit, and then regain that novelty, change it up a bit. Um, so what do you think about that? Were there toy lines that you would have liked to have seen continue, maybe in a different form? Are there toy lines that you would have liked to see in a different way, like maybe molding it or designing it a different way? It's also sad sometimes when the way these paints, the way the paint applications have aged over time, or in an ugly way sometimes. I never bought any Thundercats. In fact, for whatever reason, Thundercats wasn't available where I was. I just didn't grow up with it. That would have been, I think, 1985, if I remember correctly, 84. 84 or 85. I remember being in an apartment complex when it was out. And I remember getting, I think it was Burger King, and I got a Thundercats ring. And I probably still have the ring. I hope I still have the ring. My mom was very careful and kept all my stuff. And I kept my stuff for the most part. Thundercats are now, the theme song is running through my head. Boy, that song is so catchy. Oh, I wanted to say also that I wanted to design theme songs for these playlists, and I just couldn't do I couldn't do a playlist, a podcast, 80s Toy Aisle without including a song reminiscent of somebody who dominated, a musician who dominated these TV themes. If the name doesn't sound familiar, I'm sure you've heard him. Shuki Levy. He did Heathcliff. He just look up Shuki Levy. It's like a mile long, like pages and pages probably of credits. He did the theme songs to Heathcliff. Was it Jason and the Wheeled Warriors? What else did he do? He probably did. The Mighty Orbots was something different. I don't think he did the Mighty Orbots, but he did just a slew of different theme songs. Look him up. So, he also did Mask. So I wanted to create a theme song reminiscent of something Shuki Levy would have done. So at this point, I have, going back to this thing right here, I have 3 what I call docu-series. I'm modeling this channel after something you'd see on a streaming service like Hulu or Netflix. So I've noticed that there are 2 kinds of series. There are, aside from the stuff they take from from broadcast TV. There's a category docu-series, which is typically like 10 episodes, where they're more episodic, they're more individualistic. You have a basic common TV series premise, and you have different episodes of that premise. Like, I haven't seen the show, but was it called Black Mirror? It's more like the TV series you'd see on NBC or CBS or whatever. And for those young kids that don't know what CBS or ABC, look it up. Ask your parents. Look it up. Use Google. Or ask your friendly AI chatbot. All right, so I have 3 of them in mind. I have How Movies Work and the 80s Toy Aisle. I should actually mention what inspired the 80s Toy Aisle. There's a classmate of mine, a former classmate of mine. We were talking. Sometimes he says, "Hi, how are you doing?" in video chats, and he talked about his Mask toys that he still has, and I don't know if this is the same. It's probably similar to what older generations, the baby boomer generation and so forth had in their own sense. Toys that are fond things that they still remember. So Gen X will not. You'll have to rip an action figure out of a Gen X's dead hand, right? Cold hand. So we still collect. We're still fascinated by Mask and G.I. Joe and Transformers and so forth. So I'm a member of Generation X. And I thought, or we kind of both thought, why don't we do a video? And I'd been developing this YouTube channel. I wanted to make it into something, so more of a streaming service. So with lots of different playlists. So I asked him, and he seems interested, although I don't know how much time he can devote. So I haven't, because our lives are pretty busy right now, especially now with economic times and so forth. But I still have that idea in mind of doing an episode, maybe one episode on Transformers, another one on G.I. Joe, another one. So that's why I came up with that list of 10 slots and that I mentioned earlier. By the way, how movies work, the ones I have are through lines. The episodes I have are through lines, for 1. 2, main character dynamic. 3, objective story dynamic. And 4, motifs. I'll get to that in a moment. But going back to 80s toy aisle, oh, sorry, I was reading a message from somebody. Okay, the 80s toy aisle, maybe doing an episode on each franchise. I also thought about doing an episode or some episodes on not necessarily one franchise, but like a theme or a common aspect of toys in general. Like, for example, what's the process back then in the 1980s and now, from character design all the way to the finished product on the toy shelf. And let me see. What's that third one? So that's that topic. And I used Google Gemini to come up with little clips. It can only generate a clip of a certain, I had about 8 seconds, maybe 10 seconds the most. And I could edit them together using CapCut. For those of you who know what CapCut is, it's a video editor. And it came up with music and so forth. But I've learned so much since doing that. I want to design my own opening for each of these playlists. So let me see the next one. So so the 80s toy aisle is kind of self-explanatory at this point. We talk about have fun chatting about 80s toys and nostalgia and so forth. So, but I want to go a bit further. I want to delve in further and deeper, like why were they made, and interesting discussions. And that would be a prime candidate for live streams like this, where you can join in the chat somehow. All right, how movies work. I'm a filmmaker at heart. I'm not a professional one, sadly, but I'm very knowledgeable in screenwriting. And I've studied a theory called Dramatica, which unfortunately a lot of people, it's kind of bittersweet. A lot of people don't know about the theory, which makes anyone who knows about the theory seem like a wizard of magic. But there are professionals in the industry, I've heard, that although technically there's no way of guaranteeing that they're using Dramatica, there are certain signs that they at least have access to it, and it seems that they have used it. So it seems to have been used in the industry. You can look up what Dramatica is, but I want to create a series of episodes in a playlist I call How Movies Work, about Dramatica, how movies work, so that with those 10 episodes that I make, you would know a lot more about how movies are made, what goes into them, how to write them, how to edit them, how to design them visually, and so forth, all different aspects. And I only came up with 4 episode topics, and that leaves six more to go. And I can go in depth on each one of those topics. So that's that. Star Wars and Star Trek. I have some ideas on Star Trek and Star Wars. I don't know if anybody's watching right now, but for the record, one idea is the Klingon evolution, the evolution of the Klingon design and culture from the original series to the Next Generation and onward, how they evolved, like behind the scenes, what decisions were made, why were they changed in this way and that way, and little things that creep in that change how they're depicted today. Basically, little changes in their depiction over the decades. And also another one on figuring the timeline, figuring out a timeline for the series. And of course, I know there's an official chronology, but there are some things in the Star Trek chronology that just they don't fit. I mean, they can't connect, and you just have to accept. There's no way of wrapping your head. There's no degree of mental gymnastics that will enable it to fit. So I want to create a timeline that fits it without doing mental gymnastics, that seems to fit with what the original writer intended, how it originally came out in the episode. Staying true. Basically, what I'm saying is staying true to the original apparent intent in the episode, the context, the apparent context in the episode, whenever the reference is made, and create a timeline, an internal timeline of the fictional universe. And then note, this doesn't fit. I just accept, this reference doesn't fit with the timeline, the rest of the timeline, and I'll just note it here. This doesn't fit, but it's worth noting. And then I put down, was it lifespan? Huh? Did I put life? Oh, life as a fan. Oh, I could talk about do an episode about my own life experience as a fan. And I wrote something about that. It was a short text I wrote that's available on Amazon. And the next one is warp drive and other technology. So that'd be the fourth episode idea I came up with. Other technology, basic technology. How close are we now? Explain what the technology does in Star Trek, how it behaves, and how close we are. For example, doors that automatically open. Now, there may be some wise guy who will comment, and I welcome all comments, by the way, but somebody would say, oh, well, 1970, well, even after the original series. See, the original TV series was 1960s, and they had automatic opening, closing doors, and somebody might say, well, in 1943, they had a sensor that could detect, the presence of a heat sensor or something. But it's amazing that in the original TV series of Star Trek, they had automatic doors opening and closing. Now, of course, stagehands were behind the scenes, and there was at least one goof where it's in the famous blooper reel that goes around, where the actors had to confidently walk, and one actor said this, I don't remember who, but he said you have to just walk and presume that the door will open, just like in real life. He didn't say just in real life, but you have to act as though you presume the doors will open. And so in the original 1960s series, there's at least one blooper. In the blooper reel, there's at least one clip of them just bumping into the door because some stagehand was not doing it at the right time, just maybe he was asleep or out to lunch, literally, or something. I don't know what happened. But so we now have automatic doors. We have, we have communicators to some degree. We have video chatting. We have the beginnings of some kind of, not quite space travel, but I want to get into the space travel technology that they depicted in the TV series, and they kind of wisely didn't go into depth on how it worked. They mentioned that there were first lithium crystals, and then they changed it to dilithium. They referenced dilithium later on, which I guess would be a compound of two lithium atoms, something like that. And that would, without boring you all, but we do have lithium. It is used in, and I can't remember what the technical term is, but it's used to focus laser beams. And if you have a photon beam of high enough energy, it could excite the beam. It could squeeze the beam could squeeze through the atoms of the lithium and then project it even faster. So there is some sense. I mean, when they were making the original Star Trek series, there was some sense. They were trying to at least make it seem scientific and plausible. Plausible being the word, not necessarily realistic, but plausible. I'd like to do a video on just the technology alone, and I'll come up with other ideas, and then I have for shorter term, like documentaries, specific documentaries focused in part. The documentary will be cut up into parts. You may have seen this in Hulu and other streaming services where they have a documentary, but it's split into part 1, part 2, part 3. Typically, I've noticed they have like 2 parts, maybe 3 parts, maybe 4 parts. But then you're starting to get into the issue of a docu-series, and that's different. So I have 2. Yeah, I'm talking over the thing right now. Unfortunately, I'm talking over that. So I have 2 documentaries in mind for that. The Samantha Bahar Project, from concept to stage, which is specifically about my journey developing my female persona, my female impersonation, like performer persona, and what goes into music and songwriting and so forth. And then I have the Torah Decoded, which is explaining possible origins of who, when, where, and why, and how the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, Genesis to Deuteronomy, were put together, who put them together possibly, when they were put together, why, and what culture. And it's fascinating, and uncovering the philosophy of the author or authors that put the Torah together. And I draw on authors, speculators, research speculators, such as Stan Tenen and Russell Gmirkin, and who was the one I mention him a lot. He has a website, chaver.com. He has a book out called Before Chapter and Verse, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. I think the one who was calling in distracted me for a moment. So, and then of course then I also have this Ideas Between Us, this playlist, which I intend as a depository for these live streams and just other things that don't fit into those other playlists for the time being. I have thought of, before I say that, all right, let me go about saying that in a different way. Okay, so I don't have the technology I don't have the facilities to be able to produce high quality videos of this yet, but I can do what are called pilots. A pilot for a TV series is not just the first episode. It's a test. Read the word pilot as also meaning test or experiment. It's like it's like a rough draft. Basically, it's a rough draft. A pilot for a TV series is a rough draft that's been filmed and edited to the point of it getting on the air and being up to the quality of being viewable to an audience. Sometimes, a lot of times, the pilot isn't even shown, or if it is shown, it's shown later on in the series. Star Trek famously had The Cage, aka The Menagerie, as its pilot, and there were drastic changes because they decided, these characters won't work. We need to change it to these other characters. Change this, change that. Tweak this format and so forth. So there's so many differences between The Cage / The Menagerie. From what I've read, the pilot alternated between names. There were so many changes that it just could not be aired when it came time to film the series. So, all right, so they made a second pilot that is fortunately closer to the third episode, which was filmed. when the series was actually bought and picked up and now in production, it was close enough to that with a few tweaks, minor tweaks and edits, they could make it an episode. The second pilot I'm talking about. The first pilot just couldn't. However, due to a budget crunch later on and the scripts being late and so forth, it took a long time to work on and get these episodes to finished product in time to be aired. That Gene Roddenberry came up with a nifty idea. Hey, we've got this pilot here. If we snip here and snip there and say that this took place 13 years prior, okay, and come up with a clever story behind it, like sandwich it in within a clever story set in modern time, we could do it. So but those first two pilots of Star Trek have technically been the only pilots that Star Trek has had, to my knowledge. And it makes sense. Somebody else said the same thing. After that, what we've had has merely been the first episode of a Star Trek series. It would not be technically the pilot, because by that point, Star Trek has become familiar enough and has established itself enough so that when you're writing a Star Trek type story, you know what you'd be getting, and you just have to adapt it to this particular series premise. So anyway, somebody might be really concerned. I'll have to cut this short for now. It's been quite a while. Gee, it's been almost 2 hours. It's 1 hour and 42 minutes already. So I'm going to end the stream now. Fortunately, I have this working now and I can see the chat. So I'm going to end the stream. Wish you all well. And wish you all well. Please subscribe. Consider subscribing. I've talked about the content. I've talked about the content that I want to provide. And like this video, do all the sorts, spread the message, talk about the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye.